Perfect. Maybe you can put full screen. Yes, coming up. Great. So we officially start today's webinar. You are going to be with us for the next hour and a half. We are very excited to start this event that we've been organizing for a few weeks, months. We actually submitted it as a USEF EU Sustainable Energy Day. So you might know that USEF is organized early June in Brussels. And then you have the options to organize for around 2 months sustainable energy events. So we submitted this event as part of the program. And when I say we, it's 6 projects, EU-funded projects that you can see on the screen. Housing, Powgen, Prefigure, Rehousing, ProLight, and EqualHouse, which are, as I said, funded by the European Commission and working on common thematics that you will hear from soon. We decided this time to not focus on the projects per se, but really invite people that are close to our topics and our heart and engage them in what promises to be an interesting exchange and discussion on the topic of fair, affordable, and climate resilient housing. And we will discuss today multi-level governance, how we can bridge energy and social policies, and how can citizen-informed policies deliver affordable and energy-efficient housing. You can go to the next slide, Kalina. The agenda, so today you normally saw it already if you registered for the event, but we will, so first I start here. I'm Marine Perrio from IEECP, and I started giving you the introduction. Then we will have an opening by Matthew Zerafa from the government of Malta. We will have the option to hear from our speakers some key insights about housing, the housing future, let's say. And then we have wanted to make this event a bit specific, a bit different and original. So we asked through one of the projects a few citizens to give us their perspectives on housing inequalities, vulnerabilities, and what they think of the future. And then our speakers will react to these perspectives. We will also make you vote, so you will have the option to have your say. And please, share in the chat if you have anything you want to know more about, to ask, or to react to. Next, please. So our speakers, thanks a lot to them for joining us today, are Matthew Zerafa from the government of Malta, as I said, Susa Korita from Habitat for Humanity Hungary, Apostol Yankov, and I'm sorry if I pronounced wrongly, from the Sofia municipality, Manon Burbic from the University of Manchester, and our great moderator, Kalina Tkolova from the Center for the Study of Democracy. Next, please. So I mentioned that we are from 6 projects. This is mostly the only time you will hear from them today, but they are the organizing force behind today's event. They are a group of projects working together for about 2 years, 2 years and a half, organizing joint activities, joint webinars. So you will probably find, you will for sure find more if you go on their websites about the past activities we did together. And the projects have a common thematic, working on the housing inequalities topics, and it can go from the inclusion of migrants, marginalized communities, as well as labor insertion, housing of migrant people and other marginalized communities. Next, please. And I think the floor goes to you. Yeah, just the last slide on this introduction is that you can, of course, as I said, keep it interactive. Don't hesitate to ask questions in the chat. We are recording this event, so you will have the option to listen to it again, share it, and we will also share all the materials after the event. Now I give the floor back to Kalina, and see you in the chat.
Thank you, Marine. Thank you to you all who have decided to take the time and spend the next hour and a half with us on discussing the topic of housing and housing inequalities, the topic couldn't be more timely, especially if you were in Western Europe last week and you experienced one of the hottest days ever recorded in many cities across Spain, France, also Germany, and the UK. The discussion couldn't be at any better time on how we can make our buildings more climate resilient, and what are the solutions that the people living in these buildings, the homeowners and the citizens per se, have to say, and what they want to say and have their say in the decision-making process. With this, I would like to give the floor now to our keynote, Mr. Matthew Zerafa, who will have like the honor to open the discussion, and I'm inviting him, to share his presentation. Thank you, Matthew.
Hi, first of all, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It is my honor to be a keynote speaker, and I just have a presentation and a few words to set the tone for this conference. I don't know, just to confirm, whether the screen is being shared right now, and whether you can view the presentation, just to confirm.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So, first of all, good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to join you today for this important discussion on fair, affordable, and climate resilient housing. Over the past decade, housing has become one of the most interconnected areas of public policy, not because housing itself has changed, but because many of today's most pressing social, economic, and environmental challenges ultimately converge in people's homes. Whether we are talking about affordability, energy costs, climate adaptation, demographic change, or social inclusion, these are issues that people experience every day where they live. And this raises a fundamental question. What does it really mean for a home to be affordable today? 10 or 15 years ago, the answer was relatively straightforward. Housing affordability was largely measured by whether people could afford to buy or rent a home. Today, affordability has taken on a much broader meaning. It is about whether households can afford their energy bills, whether older buildings can be renovated without displacing the people who live in them today, whether young people can put down roots in the communities where they work and where they were brought up, and whether the transition to a more sustainable housing sector improves truly people's quality of life rather than simply adding to the financial pressures they already face. Perhaps this is the defining housing policy challenge of our generation. The question is no longer whether Europe's homes should become greener. They must. The real challenge is ensuring that this transition also makes housing more affordable, more accessible, and ultimately more secure for the people who call these homes their own. The real challenge is ensuring, as I explained. So, if we take a look across Europe, it is clear that this is no longer a challenge faced by one country or one housing market. It is Europe's housing challenge has become Europe's common crisis. For millions of Europeans, the promise of a decent, affordable home is drifting out of reach. Today, over 85 million Europeans are at risk of housing exclusion or are overburdened by housing costs. The European Commission estimates that house prices have increased by around 60% since 2013, significantly outpacing household incomes, while rental markets have experienced similar pressures, particularly for new tenancies. If we take a look at the demand for housing, the reasons become clearer that when we look at the structural forces shaping Europe's housing market, demand has changed. Migration, tourism, and urban concentration continue to increase pressure on already constrained housing markets, particularly in major cities. And we are witnessing smaller families and aging societies, a pressing issue which is and has often been overlooked. That is about demand. Now let's take a look at the supply side. At the same time, the supply of housing has not kept pace. We are building too little, too slowly, and often too expensively. Residential building permits in Europe have fallen by around 20% since 2021. Construction costs continue to rise, driven by increases in land, labor, and material costs, while productivity in the sector has remained relatively stagnant. Administrative delays and land constraints further limit the timely delivery of new housing. The challenge extends beyond new construction itself. Renovation rates remain well below what is required to meet Europe's climate and energy objectives. Today, less than 1% of Europe's building stock undergoes deep renovation each year, which is well below the pace needed to modernize our housing stock and improve its energy performance. Taken together, these trends point to a widening disconnect between what people need from housing and what our housing systems are currently able to deliver. This is also why the conversation has changed. The housing challenge is no longer simply about affordability, nor is it solely about sustainability. Housing affordability can no longer be viewed separately from energy affordability. A home that is affordable to buy or rent, but expensive to heat or cool, is not truly affordable. Likewise, climate resilience is no longer simply about reducing emissions. It is about ensuring that homes remain safe, healthy, and affordable to live in as our climate changes, as Kalina perfectly pointed out earlier in this conversation. When we take a look at the Affordable Housing Plan, and this is precisely the direction reflected in the European Affordable Housing Plan, which I form part of. What I find particularly significant is that the plan does not present affordability, sustainability, and quality as competing objectives. Instead, it recognizes that they must reinforce one another. Increasing housing supply, accelerating renovation, reducing administrative barriers, mobilizing investment, and strengthening support for affordable housing are presented as complementary parts of the same solution, rather than separate policy agendas. And I believe this represents an important evolution in our European housing policy. For many years, housing, energy, and social policy were developed largely in isolation. Today, Europe is increasingly recognizing that their needs are interconnected. A housing policy that ignores energy efficiency risks increasing energy poverty, a climate policy that ignores affordability risks excluding the households it is intended to support. Equally, an affordable housing policy that overlooks quality or resilience simply transfers today's problems into the future. The challenge, therefore, is no longer choosing between affordability, sustainability, and social protection. It is designing policies that deliver all three together. Let me give you just an example of the microcosm Malta presents in this dialogue. Coming from Malta, Malta is an island at the heart of the Mediterranean, and we are not immune to these realities. If anything, they are often magnified. Malta has the highest population density in Europe, underpinned by a resilient and highly diversified economy, including a strong tourism sector. At the same time, one of the EU's lowest fertility rates has increased the reliance on labor migration to sustain the same economic growth. As a result, our population has grown by more than 30% over just the past decade. All of this has taken place within the EU smallest member state, with a low total land area of just over 300 square kilometers. Climate change is no longer an abstract discussion. It is something vulnerable households are already experiencing every summer. For many families, especially elderly persons, low-income households, and people living in older buildings, the challenge today is not only keeping homes warm in winter. Increasingly, it is about keeping homes cool and livable during longer and more intense, at times, heat waves. And this is where the housing conversation becomes inseparable from the well-being of the conversation. Climate resilience is ultimately about dignity, whether a pensioner can sleep safely during a heat wave, whether a family can afford its electricity bill, and whether children grow up in homes that are healthy and energy efficient. The transition must therefore be designed carefully. Those who would benefit most from lower energy bills are often least able to pay for the improvements needed. And if we are not careful, we risk creating a divide between households that can invest in greener homes and those left in inefficient, costly housing. At the Housing Authority, we strongly believe that the green transition cannot become another source of inequality. If Europe is to become climate neutral, then vulnerable communities must not be left carrying the burden of that same transition. So what is our vision in this regard? That is why our plan for the next 5 years is centered around sustainability, digital innovation, and service excellence. One of the most important pillars of this transformation is our zero carbon and energy resilience agenda. Through the EU Social Climate Fund, Malta has almost secured a 31 million investment program to improve the energy performance and the resilience of our existing housing stock. The first measure will be to upgrade almost 1,000 social housing units through the installation of photovoltaic systems, battery storage, heat pumps, and other energy efficient improvements, reducing energy consumption and lowering household energy costs. The second measure will see more than 220 homes undergo deep renovation to near zero energy building standards. These upgrades will include improved insulation, high-performance apertures, and modern ventilation systems. Beyond improving energy efficiency, the renovation will create homes that are more comfortable during increasingly hot summers, healthier to live in, and better equipped to withstand the impact of future climate conditions. This is about more than reducing emissions. It is about ensuring that households most exposed to energy poverty are also the first to benefit from the transition, because the people who contribute least to climate change are often the ones most exposed to its consequences. And therefore, our responsibility as public housing institutions is to ensure that sustainability and affordability move forward together. Another important element of our transformation is digitalization. If we want to deliver faster, more transparent, and more responsive services, we need to fundamentally rethink how we operate. Today, the Housing Authority is undergoing one of the most largest digital transformation processes within the Maltese public sector. Our objective is ambitious but clear: to become fully paperless entity by 2028. We will be investing in AI-enabled systems for automated vetting of lease contracts, fraud prevention, and scheme processing. And we are introducing a unified digital application portals, integrated management systems, GIS-layered housing data platforms, and real-time operational dashboards. And these will, in turn, be also shared real-time with other public entities undergoing and responsible for other European targets. But most importantly, digitalization for us is not about technology itself or for technology's sake, but it is making public services more human and delivering better services to our customers. It is about reducing waiting times for families. It is about improving accessibility for elderly persons. And it is about ensuring that policy decisions are driven by targeted evidence rather than assumptions. I will just give you an example of how we operate one important scheme and how we track improvement. 2 years ago, it took us an average of 69 days to process simply a rent subsidy application. From the moment it was submitted till the first payment being issued, thanks to our digital transformation program and tracking the process simplification measures we have introduced, the average has just fallen to 23 days in the first quarter of this year. This is more than improvement in efficiency. It means that families receive the support they need when they need it, a hallmark of social justice. And this is the final reflection, which brings me to the final reflection. Through my participation on the EU Housing Advisory Board, one message continues to emerge very clearly across Europe. Housing policy can no longer be treated as isolated social policy. The European Affordable Housing Plan has given us an important direction of travel. The real challenge now is implementation. How do we translate ambition into homes that people can afford to live in? How do we accelerate renovation without increasing inequality? How do we ensure that the green transition strengthens our communities rather than placing new pressures upon them? These are not questions that any one member state can answer alone, in isolation. They require collaboration, innovation, and the willingness to learn from one another. And this is why we are here today. And as public housing institutions, we have a major responsibility in leading this transition. And I hope today's discussion contributes to exactly that. Because ultimately, housing is far more than just a shelter. Housing is the foundation upon which quality of life is built for today's generation and for the generation of our children. Thank you for your time. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Matthew. That was so
Thank you.
inspiring and so
I tried
so
to
energetic. No, it was great. I think that you set exactly the tone for the upcoming discussion between our participants, and you have named the elephant in the room, namely that policies are one thing, but when it comes to implementation, we have a lot of work to do. We know where we should be heading. We have the directives, we have the goals, but implementation is stalling. So let's speed it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to, so we continue with our agenda, with our program. Now I would invite Manon and Apostle to join us. So if you could also put your cameras on so that also our guests can see you. Hello. And we are opening the panel discussion, and Matthew, feel free to join the discussion if you want, because you have so much experience and so much to say and share with us. So I don't want to keep you out of the conversation. So now I will open the floor with one question to all of you. Even though Matthew already mentioned his perspectives, now I'm interested to hear what Manon and Apostle have to say about it from your perspective and your given work for Apostle as being representative of one of the climate neutral cities in Europe, and Manon representing the academia. So in your experience and perspective, which are the most urgent policy or governance changes that we need to implement so that Europe can ensure that its housing and energy transitions are both socially fair and climate effective? So most urgent policy change that we need to implement. Who would like to start? I would invite Manon, if you're okay, like ladies first, and then Apostle can join us.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Manon Burbage. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Manchester in the UK. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the discussion. My work focuses on the experiences of refugees and people seeking asylum in the UK in terms of housing and energy poverty. And I was asked to reflect specifically on, I guess, the blind spots in current energy poverty and housing policy frameworks in terms of what changes are needing to be made. And I would say from my perspective, at least from the work that I did, there are several groups, including refugees and people seeking asylum, whose needs and practices and experiences in relation to housing and energy aren't currently recognised within existing frameworks, which constitutes a form of recognitional injustice. So people aren't represented, well represented or represented at all within energy and housing indicators, policies, political narratives, and are also underrepresented within decision-making spaces. So, for example, within my work, refugees are disproportionately vulnerable to energy-related hardships, such as experiencing arrears on their energy bills, living on low incomes, and in poorly efficient housing. But they're not actually recognised at all in UK fuel poverty strategy. And access to safe and affordable energy isn't recognised either within integration and resettlement frameworks. So I guess the most urgent policy and governance change for me would be to recognise different groups and their particular needs, their cultural needs, their experiences, and as well as the intersectional needs of certain groups. So, for example, if somebody has a disability and is a newly arrived migrant, what kind of needs and experiences might they have? So that people don't fall through policy cracks, especially because those intersectional needs aren't often recognised in quantitative data. So, for example, in census data. So we need more qualitative data and data that integrates people's lived experiences to make sure that people don't remain politically invisibilised. So from my perspective, I would say that's probably one of the most urgent challenges and needs.
Thank you so much for your perspective. And now I'm giving the word to Apostle.
Thank you very much, Karina. It's a great honor to be part of this webinar, and thank you very much also to Matthew and Manon, because you set up the problem very nicely. As a climate neutral mission cities, we didn't approach the, let's say, building sectors from a social problem perspective, but it is very soon that you realize the social dimensions of what is going on. And I will highlight only 3 areas which are very problematic for Sofia, but it's also a good opportunity for us to change our policy. The first area is actually addressing climate risks in the building stocks, which is something that we haven't done so far in Sofia with regard to heat stress. We have focused mostly on cooling in the winter and on energy poverty with regards to cooling. So now we find out that in 2024 we had like a big increase in the cooling days, and I think this summer will be no different. So we have to wake up to the challenge and to realize that cooling demand is now summer energy poverty, which we didn't have before. The second is lack of social criteria, not only when we set up the policies, but also when we track the financing instruments and impact. So far, we are focusing on renovating a big like multi-family buildings, but there is no social criteria to determine about the residents of these buildings, about the different sizes of households. And increasingly, as an aging city, even though Sofia is still growing, we see that about 70% of our households consist of only 1 member, 2 members. When these are pensioners, they have fixed income. So this creates a big problem when they cannot participate to the same extent in renovation, and this creates deadlock. So it's not just the willingness and the information; it's also the affordability, the availability of this solution. And I think that we have a big risk perception gap when it comes to the marginalized, those who, in our case, in Eastern Europe, we have owner-based dwellings and housing. And sometimes we have severely marginalized groups. For example, we don't have enough data on single-family households in energy poverty. And this then creates the risk that we focus the policies on the low-hanging fruit, renovating the building that have the highest state of residence, of preparedness, that the residents get along with each other, that have the passports, and then we omit what must happen, that we address the energy poverty, including climate risk for those marginalized groups. So I think we should move in this direction generally, not just because of ETS2 or something that we do about climate, but in general.
Thank you so much, Apostle. Just a quick information also for our guests. Unfortunately, one of our speakers, won't be joining. Marine is writing that in the chat. Suza, she cannot join today. There are some connection issues with her, so it will be the three of you forming the panel. I hope that that is still okay with you. I see that, so we are fine with the time. And if you want to mention something right now and to add on what some of the other speakers said, just do it now. Sonia, I see that you have raised your hand. Will you have, you're not turned on the camera. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, Kalina. I can't turn on the camera. Now I can. It was blocked before, sorry.
Okay.
Voila. Hello. Well, good morning, everybody. And many thanks for the very insightful presentation and comment. I'm Sonia Arbaci from UCL London, and I'm part of the Rehousing project. And I found your question very, very important and very interesting. I'm coming from a slightly different perspective, more kind of a systemic perspective, especially because the EU Housing Affordability Plan is calling for more deregulation. And actually what we are seeing in the project is we are European countries are facing an increasing future problem of renovictions, which affect everybody, especially the most vulnerable group. And what we have discovered that the more deregulated is the rental private market in all the countries we've been looking at in Europe, more inequality are increasing, protections of tenants become weaker and weaker, and with the green interventions, there will be an increase and massive process of direct and indirect eviction. So what we are asking actually is to, what we would like to recommend is actually an increased re-regulations with an increased tenant protections because retrofittings will actually be a tsunami of evictions. So it will be exactly the opposite of what the European Affordable Housing Plan is asking. Just a comment on that.
Thank you for sharing your comment with us and your perspective. I think it was valuable that we heard you now, not later. And also for the other participants, the Q&A is open. So if you have any comments, feel free to write them down or questions to our speakers. And now we will continue with the program, with the agenda. Now I will present very briefly the second part of our interactive session. Let me only share my screen and hopefully you will see it, where also the participants will have the chance to vote on the following. Now you'll see on what. So please confirm that you can see my screen, because I don't see whether you can see it. So if someone can say yes, we can see it, that would be fine. Yeah, because I don't see if someone is thumbing up. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Now, very briefly, I would like to present you our work over the past couple of months as part of the Prefigure project, where we asked citizens in our cities as part of a big tour that our project did. You will see more photos in a bit. So the core idea was to include representatives of different groups, including like tenants and homeowners. Primarily, they were divided in this in a discussion where they could shape their vision for the future based on their current needs and problems, and that in that way, now with your help, we will transform their visions into concrete policy recommendations, which your expertise would be very handy. So in the first stage of the citizen panels, the participants were in the role as quasi-consultants who formed their wishes aimed at the European decision makers. So we conducted that so far in 6 cities, but because of the preparation of the presentation a little bit earlier, I couldn't. So 2 of the cities are not included, and their visions are still not included. So now you will vote only for 4 cities. They are now in alphabetical order. So we will hear the perspective and the local and in the local setting of Amsterdam, Barcelona, Sofia, and Thessaloniki. Starting with Amsterdam, you can see the corner installation. This is the core product of the Prefigure project, an open space where which was adapted for each of the cities. So it toured through the whole continent, and it was a very interesting experience for everybody that was invited and invited to participate and to organize it. And for each city, now as in the case of Amsterdam, we asked the citizens to form 2 visions for their future. Now, I will not read the whole vision through, but only highlight the key messages. And with every city, you will see that it really reflects the local situation when it comes to tenant situation or housing affordability, literally, whether there are sufficient houses or not. So the first vision of Amsterdam was is energy cooperatives need long-term public support and fair redistribution of power. And the second vision for Amsterdam was that the energy access must be recognized as a basic human right with inclusive governance. So each city, the citizens were asked to formulate it in 1 sentence. They're all summarized after at the end of the presentation, so you don't need to memorize it. So that's the point for Amsterdam. So energy cooperatives, long-term public support, and the energy access must be recognized as a basic human right with inclusive governance. Now,
Galina,
yes.
Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
know why your screen is indeed like top of the screen and small. It doesn't take the whole space. Now it does. Perfect.
Now?
Yes, now it does. Perfect. Thank you.
I had to change my screen, so now it should be fine. Okay, now it's good? Okay. So later we'll vote on the plausibility and applicability of these visions and turning them into policy recommendations. Moving now to Barcelona, that meeting happened in May. Amsterdam happened in June. Some of the colleagues are here with us. That was also a very interesting experience, and the visions framed in Barcelona are as following. One of the key messages is that the access to land and protection from speculation are key to long-term affordability. And the second message is that housing markets must be transparent and information must be accessible to tenants. These two visions reflect, as perhaps most of you are aware, the fact that in Spain, especially southern Spain, many on the coast, many of the homes are given as rentals for tourists and foreigners, and the locals are put in the situation where they literally have nowhere to live. I was in Malaga last Saturday, and as a tourist myself, I found myself in the middle of one of the biggest protests against Airbnbs. So it was a really interesting experience. As I mentioned, these visions will be summarized in a bit. Moving now to Sofia. Yeah, the Sofia stop was the first part of the tour. Me and some of my colleagues, which are also here with us, were responsible for the organization. So it was also a very interesting experience for us. And in the discussion with the participants in our workshop with the citizens, we managed to distill the following two messages. And here Apostle might might recognize the reason for it. But here the focus was on the municipal facilitation and strong governance tools which are needed for the collective renovation of multi-story family buildings. And the second message is for the independent energy advice and transparency are essential for fair energy system. So the vision is that people can receive clear and predictable information about their energy costs before they pay for their bills. And last but not least, Thessaloniki. That was one of the very successful stops right after Sofia. The colleagues here worked with the locals, and here part of the focus was again actually on migrants. The two messages that were distilled was first one, that the public investment in energy efficient social housing is essential in order to gain the strong tenant protection. And the second vision about the neighborhoods was that the participatory governance must link housing justice with the energy transition. As you can see, the focus in these four cities represents are very dynamic, and they represent the local context here. Now I have summarized them for all of you. Again, they're in the order as they were presented in a bit. And here now I will invite our speakers to think about and also to share their view. Which of these visions you feel are most realistic within today's policy framework, and which one would be most difficult to implement and why? Let's start with these two questions. Which are most realistic and which would be most difficult to implement and why? So have in mind, these are visions, these are wishes for the future, for the near future, but as it is often with participatory exercise and foresight workshops, they reflect the strong wishes of the local ecosystem, and they literally reflect the current needs and wishes. So because I cannot see all of you because of the mode of sharing my screen, so I would invite whoever wants to join, whoever wants to start first in sharing your opinion, which is most realistic and which is most difficult to implement and why. Maybe I can do like this so that you can see it and I can see you. Apostle, Manon, Matthew, what is your opinion?
Okay, maybe I can say what is less difficult than it appears, because in some Eastern European countries we struggle very much with the last bit, the participatory governance approach. And I would say that the most difficult part about this is the lack of imagination, including on our part as the kind of administration and local authority, because we think that it's impossible, basically. A 15-story multi-apartment building with like 30, 60, 90 apartments, and homeowners have effective participatory approach when it comes to renovation, renewables, and any kind of like more ambitious project. But it turns out again and again that we are wrong. So people have a better participatory culture than we anticipate when we design these programs and interventions. And now, after several pilot projects, we think that it's possible. So we're changing our level of imagination.
So you would say that the issue here comes actually from within the governmental structure, so from the local authorities side.
Only, but it comes from everyone, including the homeowners themselves, who are not used to this kind of participatory governance structure, but then become used to them when it happens. So it's a little bit of lack of imagination on everyone's part what is possible. So this is why these kind of projects are important.
Imagination. Okay, I'm taking notes.
So maybe I'll go next. So I think that the most I guess realistic within current systems for me would be the number 6, the independent energy advice and transparency. So in relation to my work, this one really resonated because working with newly arrived migrants and refugees, the UK energy system can be very complicated when you've never dealt with it before. When you're new to a country, you might not speak the language. You've had a traumatic asylum journey, and suddenly you find yourself in a position where you have to navigate a privatized system. You might not know that you even need to pay a bill. You don't know how to read a meter or submit a meter reading. You might not understand how to read the bill itself or what it means. It was discussed with people in the interviews that new tenant information packs could be circulated. So when somebody registers with an energy supplier for the first time, it should be asked the question, is this your first tenancy that you've ever held? So, that would be useful for somebody leaving their parents' house for the first time. That would be their first tenancy, or somebody leaving the prison system or the homelessness system, as well as new migrants, that the energy supplier can provide a new tenant pack, or when a housing officer, when moving somebody into social housing, could offer that. So I think that is probably the most realistic and feasible one in the current system. And again, to answer the second part of your question, which one's the most difficult, at least from my perspective, I would say that number 2, particularly the vision, when you spoke about it, talked about new migrants. And I think that given the current situation in the EU and in the UK, the hostility towards migrants, the sort of increasing move towards the far right, you need buy-in from areas outside of energy to be able to provide that as a basic right. Dignity for migrants and refugees, at least in the UK, isn't particularly high up on the agenda right now. And so gaining that political traction and favour would be really challenging from my perspective. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Matthew, perhaps would you also like to share your view about which of these visions is most realistic and which would be most difficult to apply? We'll continue with several other questions, so don't worry. I will continue asking you and getting more information from you. But yeah, so what is your view about these 8 visions? Matthew? Can you hear me? Sorry, it's fine.
Can you repeat again?
Yeah, of course, don't worry. So after we presented the visions from the 4 cities, and now we wanted to hear also your professional opinion about which of these you think are more realistic and which are hard to implement and why. So in today's policy framework, which is realistic and which is difficult to implement?
Obviously, our opinion, even when we've had broader discussions in this area, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to something which is more of a legislative nature, that tends to be more difficult to harmonize and implement, because obviously, as you all know, it is related as a more of a national competence, and countries tend to stand by that. In my opinion, what can be implemented is more when it comes to sharing of good practices and of tools like governance tools as presented here, that can be shared as good examples from different working countries, and then these platforms can be easier to interpret and adjust on a national basis, because as you all know, even implementation from municipality and at a local level tends to be different, even from a national perspective, let alone at a European level. So sharing some insights of what works and what not tends to be the easier route. Obviously, the other tend to be more difficult to implement. In this regard, even within the plan, there are already the national hubs which are already working well, and some suggestions are being suggested at that level. And also the European housing ministers are meeting from time to time, and this time they will be meeting also in Cyprus to share more of these visions on a local level, to be shared on a European level. And there is also, we are working on a pan-European platform where these examples can be shared. So there is something which we are working on when it comes to this pan-European platform, which can be implemented in the coming months. And these tools, so to say, can be implemented at that level as well. In my opinion, that is more practical.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the number 5, actually. If I can relate one so your opinion to one
Yes,
of the visions,
mostly
I would say to 5.
mostly number 5, but also when it comes to data, data as well can be shared. But not implementing more targets or related to targeting. It is just for comparative purposes, so that at a national and local level, when doing policy, one can relate and compare at a different levels.
Okay, great. So now we know you will see later in the presentation one of the suggestions that we had, how we can address and how we can send these visions turned into policy recommendations to reach the wider policymakers network. But now with what you said about the meeting in Cyprus, I feel that we should also send the policy recommendation to Housing Europe directly, which would be great. Continuing with second round of questions, and then we'll come to the more interactive part where also our guests can vote on the visions, would be, so one rather provocative question, but in your view, what are we missing? What are we lacking today? Is it the money? Is it the governance or the courage, or as Apostle mentioned, it's the imagination. I know that in each country the situation is different, but when we look at the European level, and given that, okay, for yet another summer, half of Europe is caught by surprise by the extreme weather conditions, and how we also see that there is a question in the chat about ACs and regulations in Amsterdam. How can we navigate the strictly regulated system so that we can achieve what our citizens want? But what are we lacking? Is it really money? Is it the courage, the imagination, or there is something more that we are missing?
With regards to that particular choice of words, my experience within the sector tends to show that we do have a very good imagination and very good a number of ideas that can be shared and implemented, etc. My concern, and I believe this is the hardest, is when it comes to how not even that there are no funds available, but how we tap into those funds and so access to existing funds that are available, but the administrative requirements tend to make it more difficult in terms of bureaucratic hurdles so basically I struggle to explain this clearly, but the number of administrative and bureaucratic hurdles that an entity, an organization, and an NGO needs to surpass requires a lot of expensive approach to setting up structures, entities, etc., to manage funding itself. So cutting red tape and lessening bureaucracy when it comes to funding is critical. For example, as I mentioned, we applied for the European Climate Social Fund to renovate existing housing stock, both from a deep energy perspective and other methods. The biggest hurdle and the most problematic part is that, culturally speaking, we tend to try and convince the politician to make national funds available because it is easier from an administrative and bureaucratic perspective to tap into those funds. Because when it comes to EU funding, there are a number of hurdles to implement. And if we are mentioning the fact that this is a crisis, we are saying that this is a European crisis, then crisis requires critical decisions, and with the bureaucratic layers involved, I believe that we are not being able to decide from a practical perspective and efficient perspective. So my idea is that we should be regulating entities administering funds or requesting funds, but then when it comes to actual projects, I believe we should lessen bureaucracy at scale, because this is limiting us from tapping into funds and scaling up implementation. So what we're left with is that our ideas are implemented, but are implemented solely on a pilot projects basis, which can be successful, but not at scale. And we require to scale up these implementation, and rapid and fast. So that is my concern. I believe we have a lot of bureaucracy, and this is also shaping up our political discourse at European level, because we are proposing, we have ideas, we have a lot of measures, but when it comes to implementation, we do not have the capacity to implement in a righteous and within the frameworks being published. I don't know if I'm clear enough about this because I tend to struggle to explain, but the quickest answer is no. We do have ideas, we do have the energy to implement, but when it comes to implementation, we lack resources because it is so bureaucratic to tap. And I had a discussion. We had an explanation earlier last week about even state aid issues, which where the administrative burdens were lessened to an extent, and the amounts being tapped were widened and even widened in scope. So not just for social, but now we are tackling affordable, and affordable has a number of criteria instead of what we understand and what we understand by affordable. So that's a step in the right direction, but I believe we have to be more aggressive in that regard as well. And we are not being aggressive, simply put.
I like the aggressive part. Even if I wouldn't exactly name it as aggressive, but definitely more assertive and determined. And but at several situations, I admit that more direct approach and would always work better. I would also like to hear from Manon and Apostle about your view, and also given Manon's view from the UK and the migrant perspective and in their work, what do we lack in order to integrate them better in the housing ecosystem? And after this round of your answers, we'll move to the voting part. So, Apostle Manon, yeah, please.
I'll jump in. I guess from the discussions and interviews that I did, it all seems to come back down to money, and the lack of funding, especially in the UK context. So we've had 16 years of austerity, and it's, there just doesn't seem to be any money for anything. But I think maybe in my opinion that comes down to a lack of political courage as well, because the 50 richest families in the UK have as much wealth as 50%, the bottom 50% of the population. And to me, it's a wealth redistribution, taxing the richest, the billionaires, to be able to afford these just transition policies, to be able to make sure that everybody has a home to call their own, that people are able to heat their homes or cool their homes adequately. And I think that it's a question of political courage to, increase wealth redistribution away from the very, very wealthiest in society. Perhaps that's naive, youthful optimism. I don't know, but I think in the times we're facing, we need radical solutions to the problems we're facing. Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's taxing the rich is always it's always very tricky as a message, and but yeah, we have to name the elephant in the room. Apostle, what's your take?
Hello.
Hi.
So for me, I think that with regard to the building the vision, it's much more difficult than just saying that we lack imagination. If you ask me about the migrants question specifically, which is a very difficult question, as first of all, we are not so much exposed to integrating. I should say that we should first solve the difficulty we currently have, because, for example, in our cities, we're still integrating, because Sofia is one of the growing cities in Bulgaria. So we're still integrating people with disparate socioeconomic background from other cities, including extremely vulnerable and marginalized groups. So we have to really broaden kind of like the overall understanding of the support that these disparate groups need. And then maybe we can think about our city in the more distant future, because Sofia is one of the cities that is spared of many of the climate risks. So we will be one of the, let's say, refuge cities in Europe in the not so distant future. So we really have to be able to provide the basic social services and the decent housing for all. And this is something that I should say that we're just in the beginning stages of realization.
Thank you for that. So now I will leave you for a couple of minutes so that you can take take a breath, and let me know whether, yeah, now you should see my full screen. We moved through the discussion with the following questions. I left the last one on purpose because I think that actually some of these ideas are already implemented in different situations, so it was not part of that discussion. But now let's move to, actually, yeah, let's literally move. And the question for you is whether you would go for a walk. I truly hope that you can recognize the person on this video. This video is minute and 30 seconds, and I would like to show it to you. This is one of the new formats of DG Energy, the Director General for Energy at the European Commission, initiated by the Commissioner himself, Dan Jorgensen, who introduced this format of short walk, where citizens, different stakeholder groups can reach out with their views and expertise on particular topic, and he would hear you out. So I will play the video, and after that we'll discuss if we were part of such walk, what would we say to the commissioner and which visions we would like to present to him as policy recommendations for the future of Europe.
Okay, Lina, we don't have the sound, I think.
No, I don't know. I don't know. No, so I was just saying that it's the first time I do this, but it's a new concept where I have the possibility of listening a little bit to you guys speaking to each other. So we will put forward what we know, the lie, the electrification plan. So I'd like maybe we'll start with that, some input on that. How you see what are the challenges?
So yeah, that we couldn't get much of the discussion, of course, from this video, but you saw that there was a representative of Wind Europe, of the Parliament, and it is open for recommendations from every member state. So if we were to send a recommendation based on the visions, I would like you now to vote and tell us. Wait. Yes. So now I hope that this works. So I presume you're all familiar with Slido. You can scan the QR code on your left or join at slido.com using the code below, and I would pretty very much appreciate if now you can vote, all of you who are still with us on the webinar, from these visions that you all saw, if we need to phrase them into policy recommendation and present them to the commissioner, which one you would choose? They are the 8. We should see, okay, I see 3 for ranking. Let me see whether it works. So you can choose 3, okay. Okay, so far we have 5 people voted. Okay, 6. I think we were 15 or 16 on the call, so yeah, if all of you could vote, that would be very much appreciated. Let's see, how do we go? So, okay, so far I think we have some clear winners. It's very interesting that actually almost all of you have voted that energy access must be recognized as basic human right with inclusive governance. I find this very, very interesting. Second ranking is for the public investment in energy efficient social housing is essential, together with the strong tenant protection. And third, so far, we have the participatory governance must link housing justice with the energy transition. Very nice. So I will leave it open if someone still hasn't voted, so that you can scan the QR code. So any initial thoughts, Apostle, Matthew, Manon, on what also our guests here at the webinar think? Yeah, please directly join the discussion and share. I would also maybe now, I think that we have time, if someone also from the audience would like to join and say why they voted like this and would also like to share comments, opinion, please do so. I will only
I would just like to say that energy access being recognized as a basic human right is very interesting for us, because we still haven't liberalized our energy markets based on the same assumption. So some European countries are now asking us whether they have done the wrong choice or we have done the right choice. So it's a very interesting discussion.
Okay, great. I will return now again the sorry, something happened. I will return the voting, but yeah, I mean, for me also knowing the electricity market in Bulgaria and the situation, it is perhaps it's actually very good that Matthew is with us, because I know that Malta is the other country which is also without the liberalized electricity market for for households. So that is also a nice too. Okay, let's see whether now you will be able to see the results. Again, sorry for it should generate, yeah. Okay, any other opinion, views? Manon, I also know that you should be heading in 3 minutes. So if you would like also to share your your view?
Yeah, I think it is interesting that energy as a human right was top, and I think perhaps it's because that underpins all of the others. It underpins the direction that we should be going in. That kind of premise, the sort of justice-based approach, the care-based, participatory, community-centered approach is really important for all the others to kind of for the others to become reality. So I'm pleased actually that it's the top, that it's a shared vision that we have as people on this webinar.
Great. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, that would definitely be top priority. Okay. Maybe someone from the audience would also like to share a view. If you want to tell us why you voted like that, or if you then I will address the comments in the Q&A session, in the Q&A chat.
Adriana raised her hand. Kalina.
Yeah,
Oh,
because I
okay.
cannot see her, so please.
Oh yeah, fair, fair.
Join
Yeah, I
her.
was about to jump in, and I guess
Yeah.
I'm a little bit part organizer, but maybe to a
Yeah.
lesser extent. So, I just wanted to speak to the point about the participatory governance. I
Mhm.
thought that was really interesting and really important, because some of these housing-related solutions have, intersections with other fields, of course, right? And so what came to mind for me was nature-based solutions, which came up in some rehousing webinars, and yeah, there's just like this kind of big intersection, right? Because when we're installing housing, we also have to think of the areas around, what's the green space looking like in that area? If we implement some of these solutions, is it going to increase the housing costs? But then again, when we think about this, it affects like the daily lives of people, and so that's why it's pretty important to ask everyone living nearby how they feel about things being installed and like kind of gauge the social acceptance. And then that being said, it can also connect a little bit to education. I think if Demetra's still on the call, we were in a project called NBS EduWorld, which dealt with education in NBS. And so such projects with co-creation like are really a chance to see where people's knowledge level is at. And if it's not very high, ideally, when people are part of the process, they can become more informed. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your opinion. I will close it so that I can see you.
Yes.
Yeah, please, Dimitra.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for such a engaging and very kind of emotional and passionate discussion on a really important issue. I agree with everything that Adriana has said, but I did want to kind of go back to your question about why I also picked the human right one as my top one. And I think in some ways it's the kind of the very basic thing that, anything we think about from a human rights perspective, kind of unfurls like a legal framework that nations, that countries have to kind of adhere to in terms of thinking about how does that translate for each country. And so there's legal frameworks, there's policy frameworks, and all that stuff. So I think that's fundamental. And it also provides a framing for, in many ways, a common language when we talk about human rights and dignity and all of these things that can bring many different actors to the table to have a shared discussion about what is really important and critical, and then how that then gets translated on the ground in terms of implementation. I agree with Matthew in his keynote. He said many wonderful things, but I think the thing around implementation is critical. And I think human rights are fundamental to helping us, kind of are such a fundamental driver for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Manon. So she just left her email in the chat, so feel free to reach out to her. Yeah, she had to leave 10 minutes earlier. All the best also to her. Good. So we're still here. If someone also would like to share their opinion, we have a couple more minutes about their vote or their view. And we'll wrap up with one final question to now only to Apostle and to Matthew. And but Before that, would anyone like to say something? Okay, if not, great. Then I have one last question to our speakers. So if you have 30 seconds on that walk with Commissioner Jorgensen next time that he's doing the power walk, what would you say in one sentence to convince him that, and what would you like to say? One sentence. Given that the walk would be in the beautiful park in the center of Brussels, I assume, but let's say. So given that, yeah, we are talking with the top policymaker in the EU bubble. So what would you say? And also, okay, I will also open the question also to our to all of you who are still with us. If you have the 30 seconds on that walk with the commissioner, what would you say in one sentence? It's a nice thought exercise. Yeah,
Wow.
so I will, if Dara wouldn't mind, I will give the floor first to Apostle being our speaker, then I'm giving to Dara directly. So,
Okay. Well,
Apostle,
I
please.
would be asking him, thinking about the climate of the future that we'll have in 20 to 30 years, how should cities like Sofia cope, as a question, but then maybe as a suggestion, I should say that, you know, in climate, we always talked about no regret solution. So focusing on housing is the best climate no regret solution we can have, because this is the home where people live.
Thank you. Very, very poetic. I'm writing it down. Dara, please.
Okay.
No, to Matthew first, please.
Yeah, to Matthew first. Sorry, I didn't see that you unmuted yourself.
Yes, I because I was taking the time to think.
Yes.
I believe so. One thing that I've had the opportunity to say this already to him is that we require formalized structures where people interested in these subjects, which are correlated both in terms of energy and in terms of affordability and the wider discourse of housing, are made permanent within the EU structure, so that this sharing and these opportunities are continued in a permanent way. Because I've been attending so much conferences, webinars, sharing of information across a number of entities, pressure groups, NGOs, public entities, and they're all just saying the same, that we need this discourse to continue in a permanent structure where we can present our arguments and positions clearly and not finding ways of how to pitch our ideas in whatever is going on from time to time, which tend to be more cosmetic at times and more cosmetic, so to say, rather than made permanent. So permanency is an area which is of concern for me.
Very nice. Thank you. Yeah, the next one.
Yeah, just to say very quickly, I mean, if I have one quick sentence with the commissioner, it's to say that to recognize there is no such one-size-fits-all model when we're dealing with vulnerable people and their housing needs. Every country has its own unique history, its own unique challenges, its own unique opportunities. And while we appreciate the effort at the EU level in coordinating different stakeholders in different countries, you have to meet each nation at their own level and understand what the challenges are in that context. So trying to have an overly hierarchical model where the EU is developing some policies which trickle down to the member states, the regions, the localities, it can work for certain policies, but when it comes to, for example, EU structural funds and financing and so on, you need to be adaptable. You need to understand very well the challenges, the context in each member state, and you need to be able to ensure that the frameworks are adaptable in that way to make sure that the funding, the supports, and the work of the European institutions really has the maximum impact in each member state. But that will only ever happen if we really understand very well the local context, and we don't think that the situation in Brussels is identical to the situation in Valletta, for example. We have to really understand that every country has their own context, and we have to work within that context, not against that context, or work to try and homogenize the system, because that's never going to work. Social housing, affordable housing, and these kind of questions are inherently path dependent. They are based on history, culture, heritage, and so on, and we have to recognize those constraints.
Thank you so much. Definitely, yeah. No one solution for all. So we had the adaptability, the persistence, the climate of the future. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts from the audience? If not, then I would like to thank you all for joining us today. I hope that it was very interesting for you and that you're leaving this webinar inspired. I definitely learned many new things and would follow up on everything that Malta does because so I personally got very engaged. Our contacts are available. If you would like to follow up, definitely do it. So we from the sister projects, but not only. I think that those our speakers are available. And yeah, thank you for the engagement, for the discussions, and for me, I wish you climate resilient summer. In cool facilities where you don't have to suffer through the heat, like we all do. And yeah, let's wish that and support our local authority in making our cities more resilient. So, okay, the blog and the proceedings will be uploaded by Thursday on the link provided by Marine in the chat. So as said, the video and the recordings will be uploaded, the presentation as well. So I will ask Matthew to send send his slides if that's possible. Yeah, and thank you again. So I will give now the word to Marine for last words.
Very easy last words. Many thanks to the speakers and to Kalina for the great moderation. As requested many times, everything will be shared by email, online, on social media, and we will make sure to have a blog summarizing everything that was shared today. Thanks, Apostle, Matthew, Manon. Thanks all of you for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Bye.
Thank
Have a nice day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
summer. Bye.